Okay, this is English 250, week 6, part 7. All right, here we go. So, Derrida. Now, I'm going to read the first paragraph of Derrida, and you're going to see the problem immediately. Derrida's fucking impossible. Of all of the people we read this semester, I really find Derrida to be the most difficult, and it's entirely possible that I will freak out and not teach him because I can't stand it anymore, but let's see how it goes. By the way, Derrida is the last author in the Art and Reality unit. And by the way, I know it's taken us a long time to get to this unit, but I think this unit is important, and it's longer than the other units. The other 2 units are like shorter. I think this one has 6 philosophers, but it's also like the class intro, and then the next one only has like 5, and then the last one I usually just like 3, but we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to read you the first paragraph of Derrida, and you'll totally see the problem with fucking Derrida. Here we go. To produce this signifying structure obviously cannot consist of reproducing, by the effaced and respectful doubling of commentary, the conscious, voluntary, intentional relationship that the writer institutes in his exchanges with the history to which he belongs, thanks to the element of language. This moment of doubling commentary should no doubt have its place in critical reading. To recognize and respect all its classical exigencies is not easy and requires all the instruments of traditional criticism. Without this recognition and this respect, critical production would risk developing in any direction at all and authorize itself to say almost anything. But this indispensable guardrail has always only protected, it has never opened a reading. Like, oh my God, like I don't, Jesus. So, that's crazy. It's very, 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 very difficult. And I probably will flip out and not do Derrida. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but of all the handouts I gave you, I think Derrida's the shortest one because I could only stand so much Derrida, because holy shit. So, let's see if we can get this started. So he says, to reproduce this signifying structure obviously cannot consist of reproducing, by the effaced and respectful doubling of commentary, the conscious, voluntary, intentional relationship the writer institutes. Okay, Jesus Christ. So signifying structure there really just means words. All right, you know what? I can do it. Let's do signifying structure real quick. It's not that hard. The signifying structure means it's a structure because it's got 2 levels, like a building is a structure. It's a structure because it's got 2 levels. The levels are this. There's reality, and then there's the representation of reality, right? So we've been looking at art, which is a representation of reality. That's a structure, and it's a signifying structure because art is supposed to mean something about reality, right? What Derrida is thinking of, though, is a slightly different signifying structure, although it's very similar. He's thinking of a signifying structure, meaning there's a word, and it refers to a thing. It signifies a thing. So, real simple, there's the word tree, T-R-E-E, and then there's this thing. It's an actual tree. So, that's funny because I always use the tree example, and now I'm teaching in the fucking woods. So, and of course I'm so New York City that I think Prospect Park is in the woods. And like, there's the fucking street is like right there. I'm not in the woods, I'm in New York City. The point is that for Derrida, he's interested in, we've been talking about the relationship between art and reality, but the particular art that Derrida is interested in is words. And the idea that words, just like art is a representation of reality, it's a copy of reality, it refers to reality, it's based off reality. Words, the word T-R-E-E is supposed to refer to an actual object, a tree, like the trees behind me. That's the signifying structure he's interested in. Now, he's mostly thinking of words, although this is kind of true for images as well, right? A picture of a person is supposed to represent that person. And actually, you know, like Facebook and Instagram, you'll have a little picture of you that's like your profile picture, right? And that's it's a signifying structure. The profile picture, the image of you, is supposed to represent you. It signifies or means you. That's like your identifying mark. So he's mostly talking about words, although once you notice that the relationship between images and things is very similar to the relationship between words and things, you realize he's talking about all art everywhere. But the point is that the signifying structure, there's the thing like a word or an image that refers back to some kind of reality. So here's his issue. He says, to reproduce the signifying structure obviously cannot consist of reproducing, by the effaced and respectful doubling of commentary, the conscious, voluntary, intentional relationship that a writer institutes in his exchanges with history to which he belongs, thanks to the element of language. Oh my God. Okay, so let's say this. The doubling of commentary, he says it cannot consist of reproducing, through doubling of commentary, an intentional relationship. Let's just start with that. He says, the signifying structure cannot consist of reproducing through a doubling of commentary the intentional relationship that the writer institutes. Okay, let's start with that. Intentional relationship that the writer institutes. It's a fancy way of saying what the writer intended, right? So when he says the what the writer intended, we often talk in literature, when you take a class in literature, and I've been doing it too, I'm like, what Plato means is what Baudrillard means. I'm telling you what they mean, right? He talks about the doubling of commentary. An easier way to say the doubling of commentary is paraphrase. You learn, or putting things in your own words. That's what I've been doing this whole time. I read a sentence that they said, I read their quote, right? And then I put it in my own words. That's a doubling of commentary. They said something, that's their comment. Then I tell you what they said. I doubled their comment. Now there are two comments. They mean the same thing I'm claiming, right? Because I'm like, oh, here's a sentence by Baudrillard. This is a very confusing sentence. Let me put it in my own words here. You see how I've doubled it? I've sort of copied it, not exactly, but I'm copying the idea, but putting the idea in different words. So that's a ton of school consists of, here's something somebody said, let me tell you what it means. So they said something, that's commentary, and then you double the commentary by saying it again in a slightly different way, so it makes sense to people. Derrida says this doubling of commentary doesn't work to capture the writer's intention. That's a good point. And actually, that's a point that students make all the fucking time, which is teachers will be like, what Hamlet says this. In other words, what Shakespeare was trying to say, that's my favorite student construction, what Shakespeare was trying to say, like Shakespeare wrote it down and he fucked up, but you're gonna fix it for him. What Shakespeare was trying to say, and then you put it in your own words. It's a doubling of commentary, right? But the problem is that when Hamlet says something, and I give you a Hamlet quote, right? And then I put that Hamlet quote in my own words. And then I follow it up by going, what Shakespeare means here is what Shakespeare intended to do, the writer's intention. And this is something students love to jump on, because at some point in every class there's a student who's like, how do you know that's what Shakespeare meant to do? How do you know that was Shakespeare's intention? And I say something stupid like, well, it seems like the blah. But really, nobody knows. The problem is that it's a way of talking that we all do. We go, well, what he meant was, what the author was trying to say was, the meaning. And I'm doing this all semester in all my classes. I get a quote, I put it in my own words, and then I say, listen, what Shakespeare is saying here is. I just did it with the Seams passage. And I told you, here's what Shakespeare means by that. How do you know? That's what the guy means. The person, Shakespeare, who lived? How do you know that's true? And students will often be like, if you could go back in time and ask him, do you think he would agree with you? And we'll talk later about why I don't care what Shakespeare would say if I asked him. I'm interested in Shakespeare's plays, not Shakespeare the guy. But that's a whole, we're going to get to that in the next unit, which is called Art and Authors. But for now, Derrida is saying, listen, you start off with some words by Shakespeare. Then they get translated into words by Jeff Gluck, right? And then I tell you what Shakespeare meant. How the fuck do I know what he meant? Because all I have are his words and my words, and I've doubled the commentary. That's not going to get us closer to Shakespeare the person, because all I did was take some words on a page and then double them into more words, when what I was trying to get to was what was going on in Shakespeare's mind. Another way to put this is, I was interested on what was going on in Shakespeare's mind, so I read Shakespeare's words, and then I created more words. Do you see how that doesn't get us any closer to Shakespeare's mind? We started with words, and then we got more words, and we're sort of stuck there in the doubling of commentary, which does not get us closer to the writer's intention. Okay, I think we've done a good job going through that first sentence, basically. And I'll probably flip out at some point, and I'll zip through some of this, because it's really just like way too difficult. I should do a little bit more. No, that's it. I'll pick it up in the next video. All right, thank you.